everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. Today I'm speaking to Yonatan Hurwitz. He is in Israel, and I think I saw it right. Are you in Jerusalem?
I am.
Okay. Are you in the old city, or what part of Jerusalem are you in?
I'm the part right around the old city with
Okay.
the valley of Gabin on the edge of it,
Okay.
where the city is across the valley.
Okay. So I reached out to him because if any of you saw, I did a video recently about Nazarites, and then I had somebody reach out to me and say, hey, you should talk to a friend of mine. He is a Levite Nazarite. And I was like, yeah, of course, that would be great. And so I reached out and it worked, and he agreed to
Here we are.
this interview. Here we are. So in case anybody missed the video that I did and doesn't know, could you explain what the Nazarite vow is?
From the purely biblical perspective, the Nazarite vow is mentioned in Numbers 6, relatively short portion, and it's a vow which is given to the children of Israel, men or women who choose to take on that vow. It's a three-facet vow where one would classically abstain from anything grape related, wine, first degree, let's say, kind of impurity. And the third facet is to let one's hair grow. That's basically it.
Okay. And then so I had no idea that anyone was still doing this. Like, whenever I've seen, because like I watch a lot of videos of, Jerusalem, Israel, and as far as I knew, I had never seen anyone that was a Nazarite. How many people that engage in it? Is it rare, or like, how often does it happen?
In my experience, yes, it's rare. And I've been fortunate enough to meet a few Nazarites, a couple of them who have written books, and I've purchased those books, and it's always nice to get more knowledge. A couple of Nazarites I know digitally in New York, in South Africa, and a small scattering.
Okay.
Even more rare is the woman Nazarite, which there is one that is part of a couple who are Nazarites that I hope to meet in Jerusalem. Hasn't happened yet, but that's even rarer in my experience.
Wow, a couple of Nazarites. Well, I think it's really neat. How long have you been doing it for?
I think this is my 13th year, so 12 years and change.
Okay. And if it's not too personal, how long will you be doing it? Because based on my research, you could either, like, your parents could dedicate you as a Nazarite, as was the case like in Samuel and Samson, or it's just an individual thing and you determine the length of time, and some people do it for life. So if you don't mind me asking, how long will yours go for?
No, not at all. I would love it if I could take my last breath still under this vow and go back into the earth still under that vow. So for me, it's a lifelong thing. Halachically speaking, by, let's say, Jewish law, Orthodox rabbinic Jewish law, since there is no temple at this time standing in Zion, any man or woman of Israel who takes this vow wholeheartedly, meaning to take it, it's for life by default.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, because the way that you end it is by going to the temple, and then you, from what I researched, you have like the 3 different offerings, plus I think 3 in addition to the hair itself.
That's right.
In that, I can't remember what it's like, that chamber that's off of the court of the women.
Yes, Lishkat Nazirim, the hall of or chamber of Nazarites.
Yeah,
where the Nazarites would cut their hair and add it to the Thanksgiving fire.
Yeah,
that's underneath.
Well, so let me ask you this. Okay, so if within our lifetime, and I do think it's going to happen, that the third temple is reconstructed, do you think at all that would change things for you? You might consider doing it just to have that special experience?
No, the special experience, in my estimation, for me, is to keep going
Yeah.
and to do it for life. That's me separating myself in certain small ways, but for life, all in.
Okay. So, well, and then on that note, since we're talking about the temple, do you feel like it will happen within our lifetime? Because I see a lot of excitement, a lot of people. Of course, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I see a lot of Jews that are, it feels like it's at fever pitch, expecting Mashiach and
Mm.
expecting the temple. What do you have any feelings on that? Like that it's going to happen soon?
Well, my feelings, I go very much, or I strive to walk very much in that path of Eden. Before the need for a temple, ritual sacrifice, the oils, the garments, the precious metals, the stones. So it's my opinion that should the temple be rebuilt, it'll be a means to an end.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going for that end, meaning, technically speaking, we could bypass the temple altogether because it's just stones and bricks and it was destroyed twice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's possible for that human embodiment of the Most High, right? That human being, as it was in Eden, that Tselem Elohim, that image of God. We don't need all of that. We need that direct connection. However, being that this is this life after the fall, etc., the temple, will it be rebuilt? I hope so. But my vision of the temple personally is a different one. I see it as a vegan temple first, and one where, again, a means to an end.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what exactly happens, and I hope it gets built too. A lot of people are anticipating that.
That's right.
Now, whenever you come across other Jews, and obviously you're surrounded by them, do they have any sort of reaction to meeting a Nazarite? Because, like you said, it's not very common. Just like, do they just instantly know, like when they look at you, do they know what's happening, or
Oh, no.
no?
No, I'm assuming most people think I'm a Rasta, right? Rastafarian.
Uh,
And the Rastafari do have a connection to the Nazarite vow insofar as that's why they take their vow and grow their dreads. It's to emulate the way of the Nazarite.
yeah,
But
I think I saw that. Okay, yeah.
yeah. So only a couple, 2 or 3, have turned to me and asked, "Hey, are you a Nazarite?" And when I say I answer in the affirmative, it's usually surprising because it's rather, a rare thing. Hang on a
Yeah.
sec. Okay. Yeah,
Now,
something popped up.
if you don't mind me asking this, I know that I'm going to use like the Israeli terms. I know that
Sure.
there's Hiloni, there's also Masorti and Dati and Haredi, generally speaking. And I know that within those, there's like different even shades and
Sure.
stuff like that.
Subsets.
Yeah. Where would you fall along that spectrum?
Well, I grew up religious, Dati Leumi, meaning, as you've mentioned in the channel previously, not mainstream Orthodox, national Orthodox. My parents are from New York originally. They made Aliyah. I don't fall into any specific sect, category, or group. I define myself more as, Yonatan, I'm a Hebrew man, no more, no less. But seeing as it's Israel and everybody has to, I would have my wife said this when this came up, a while ago, a long time ago, and she said, I think that we are adventurous traditionalists.
All right.
So you've mentioned the Masortiim.
Uh-huh.
So there are some things in which I still adhere to halacha, to the Orthodox law, and other things in which I don't. And it's I pick and choose. I'm a cherry picker by definition. I pick and choose everything, and I make no apologies. So that's my thing.
Now, is she, I guess you would have already said it, but is she also doing the Nazarite vow, or is it just
No,
you?
she is not.
Okay.
She's not. Though I did ask her. I asked her opinion. I wanted her input before I took the vow.
Was there anything special that you did to initiate it? Because I haven't heard that there's anything special necessarily that you do. Was it just like one day you're like, okay, this is it, I'm doing it? Or was there anything else to it?
Well, I mean, I felt, let's say, the call to the vow long
Mhm.
before I physically or verbally took it. So there was a kind of buildup there. Eventually, when the vow was taken, it was very simple in that one-on-one discussion between me and the Most High. And I said, okay, so starting now, took my vow and carried on.
Well, that was certainly a big milestone in your life. It must have been a very, even though it's simple, it still must have been a pretty powerful experience once you did
The,
it.
the key to the Nazariteship's wonder is its simplicity, in the sense of, like I said, it's a very small portion, 3 facets. We could obviously delve into what they are more, but and the change that occurs in the individual is so mighty that they are called sacred and separated and wearing, right, the crown of let's say, the divine revelation, in different words. But it's a very, like you said, it's a very small thing, but it's a fundamental change. For me, it was the catalyst to many good things. It simply snowballed from there. And there was, like I said, a leading up to it. But yes, it's a small moment, let's say, but it affects a lifetime if you let
Yeah.
it.
Now, were you born in Israel or
I was, yeah.
you were? Okay. So you've lived there your whole life. And obviously you speak English just like an American. I'm sure that it was spoken in the home. And I know that there's many in Israel that speak English. I know that it's required in the public education system.
Right.
So and I've heard you'll have to confirm if this is true. Is it easy to get around? Because I haven't been to Israel yet. I hope to do so at some point. Is
Yeah.
it easy to get around? Well, first, let me say, I'm actually currently learning modern Hebrew, and
No, good for you.
thank you. It's
That's a trip.
yeah, it's been really fun. I love it. But whenever it does happen that I go to Israel, are you able to get around okay with just English?
Most definitely.
Okay.
I would think so. More often than not.
I know that English, you know, you got Hebrew, obviously, you have English, and I think another large uh or a portion of the population speaks Russian, right?
Russian, Arabic,
Yeah. So
Amharic.
but anyway, I'm gonna try my best before I pass away to master Hebrew. I would that's kind of like a dream come true for me.
That's an amazing thing to set out. I really hope you succeed.
Yeah. It,
It's
it
something.
it's turned out, at least in the first part, it's turned out a little bit easier than I thought, because at first it seemed like so foreign to me, just like
Mm.
the written, the characters.
The very direction.
Yeah, but it's working. I'm using Duolingo, the Duolingo app, and that
How
seems
long?
how long? This is only kind of recently, but it's only been like maybe about a month or so, something like that.
Good for
But
you.
I don't know. So I'm just gonna have to. The problem is because I served in my church. I served a mission in Spain, and so I learned Spanish. And in that experience, it took me about a year before I was fluent.
Mm.
And it seemed like you pretty much had to be immersed in the language, speaking it every day with native speakers to like really get to that point. So that's my only concern with Hebrew.
Mm.
Because I won't have that advantage. But now I'm assuming that do you speak Hebrew? Do they teach that in school?
Very, very much. I mean, they teach grammar and everything else that goes with the literature, and
Mhm.
so yeah, they teach it in the sense of, if you don't get it in school, you still can learn the different spoken and written rules in school. So yeah,
And
they teach it.
is that what's actually spoken as they're teaching? Is like Hebrew, is it the default for most everybody?
Up
And
until a short time ago, the dual languages officially were Hebrew and Arabic. If I'm not mistaken, because I don't really follow, there was a law that was passed a short while ago, relatively short, and in which Hebrew became the default, let's say, as you put it, and other languages being second. in that sense, it's pretty new. And there's still Arabic everywhere and on signs, and it's all good. There's such a large Arab population here. You can't ignore that, obviously. Certain things were put into place, but officially, technically speaking, I think the language of the land is Hebrew, with all the other ones secondary.
And then, okay. And then if you were to meet somebody on the street, would the default language be Hebrew?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Yeah, there's probably not any like Israeli Jews that like don't really speak it, right? Or are there some that like make Aliyah?
No,
Go ahead.
There are many, because there are those in the Haredi community who go against the use of modern Hebrew in the sense of a sacred language being put to everyday secular mundane uses. And so they speak Yiddish primarily in order to give Hebrew the respect it deserves in scripture, in prayer, etc., learning Torah, and they would use Yiddish. Everything else, certain parts of the Haredi community and other parts are relatively connected, called Haredim Leumiyim, much like Datiyim Leumiyim, national Haredi. They don't all shun the state, but some who do go hardcore, and they only speak Hebrew in certain times.
That's interesting. What was that group's name again within the Haredi?
Well, I'm not sure if, I mean, the very famous ones would be the Neturei Karta, but they're on that far, far end. There are even ones that are more moderate, let's say. I wouldn't venture to a specific group, a lot of Hasidic groups, but I wouldn't presume to know since I'm not part of that community.
Do you speak Yiddish or do you understand it?
No, neither. I mean, no, let's say no.
Okay. I noticed that was one of the languages that's offered on Duolingo for English speakers that are learning other languages. And I was like, I wonder if that would at all be useful. Because I'm going to try and tackle a few at a time. I know that there's people that they suggest, like, if you want to become like I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called a polyton or something like that, where you speak 5 or more languages. Some people do it as a hobby. And so some recommend to like learn a few at a time. And so that's what I'm going to try and do.
Wow.
I saw Yiddish and I was like, man, should I at all try and do that? Because with Hebrew, I could use it hopefully in the future in like maybe interviews like this. It'd be really fun to do like an interview just in Hebrew. It'd be nice to use it as I read the Hebrew scriptures.
For sure.
But then with Yiddish, I'm not sure if at all I would use that at all. But
well, if you're planning on joining the Haredi community, yes, it would be very helpful. Otherwise, there is some Yiddish theater, and there are those of an older generation, regardless of their religious status or affiliation, that speak Yiddish as the old language, but they are dying out. Yiddish is sort of dying out, and I say that, I use the term loosely, but yeah, there's still things that are people and institutions that are keeping it going, but basically the Haredi community, I would think, is where it's more prevalent.
Okay, yeah. So you speak English, you speak Hebrew. Do you speak Arabic or any other language?
I started learning spoken Arabic, the local dialect, a few years ago. I then moved to the Netherlands for a few years. I came back only last year, but I want to continue learning Arabic. It's a beautiful language, and so much of the population speak it. And I would definitely want to keep going with that. Other things are occupying my list of priorities, but it's definitely still there. I still want to do it.
Yeah, that's actually one of the other ones that I'm trying to tackle. I'm doing Hebrew, Russian, and Arabic at the moment.
Wow.
Trying to do those.
That's ambitious, man.
Yeah.
but that's good.
Yeah,
but that's good.
Yeah.
No, languages expand your mind in a way that basically nothing else can. Not quite like that.
Yeah. And there's benefits to it. I know that it helps. There's many articles that talk about the fact that it can help put off dementia.
Yeah, psychologically it expands the mind, and it's an amazing thing to learn a language.
Yeah. Now, Hebrew itself, I believe it's a sacred language. I know that the scholars believe that it ties back, I think, to Phoenician, but within Judaism, is the general view that it's been undefiled since the beginning. I know that it's really important when it comes to like Gematria and Kabbalah, I believe, right?
Right.
So is that the view that it goes back? It's like the pure language of God that he used to create the world?
Well, first, if you're talking about written or spoken, because there's the Paleo Hebrew and then there's the Ashuri Hebrew, the shape of the letters is different, and that has an effect. But if you're talking about Kabbalah and creation, it's the modern day square Hebrew letters that we use, not the script, but the. And so, as far as I'm concerned, you're asking what I believe about that, or what is the vibe in you know.
But I guess both. Do you at all practice Kabbalah
Practice is I don't practice it,
or
but
learn it? I don't know.
I've been learning some form or other of Kabbalah since I'm 16, and so yes, practice it. That's a difficult one to answer, and so I would say no.
Because okay,
But
I think I know.
no, no.
Okay.
So as for the Hebrew letters, yes, I'm very much of the opinion that conceptually speaking, they were used to create the world, in the sense of that's how we should think of it, because we are speaking creatures. Let's give it its credence and let's give it its significance. Now, the people, it's well known as Lashon HaKodesh, the sacred tongue. There's a difference of opinion in our sages, on why exactly it was named Lashon HaKodesh, the sacred tongue. But basically, it's still referred to as such, perhaps not always in the news. Ivrit is Ivrit, Hebrew is Hebrew, but it's still a well-known use for a different name for it, a synonym for Hebrew. And I guess if you would stop and ask somebody, is this language sacred to you? Do you set it apart? Like if you'd really get technical with the meaning of what it means to be holy or sacred, to set something apart, I think they would say, no, it's my everyday language. I use it when I get angry, and I use it when I have, when something good happens. I use it. It's something I use every day. And people could say that it can still be sacred in the scripture and the Torah and the study and the prayer, much like a Charedim do. That it may always be sacred, since those things are set apart to begin with, for spirituality, religious purposes. But no, I think they would say no in that sense.
Now, when it comes to, sorry, and I know I'm like running the gamut with all these different
Go
topics.
for it, man. I'm here. Let's do it.
I just, I've decided that with my channel, I want to speak to a lot more Jews. My church has a very keen interest in it, but unfortunately, a lot of us, we just don't have the opportunity to learn much about it. We just know basics, and it plays in a lot into our theology. So, when it comes to Kabbalah and Gematria, and just so you know, I'm actually every other week I speak to a rabbi that's in Israel. His name is Rabbi Gurfin, and he's associated with Israel 365. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Yeah. So I'm talking to him, and he was kind of like talking about this, about Gematria. And does the Gematria, so to speak, work with other languages, or is it just viewed like in the Hebrew context?
Well, first, it's a hard G. It's a Gematria, if you can pull it off with a Gimel.
Yeah.
But besides, don't mean to, a helpful critique.
So it's a Gematria.
Gematria, right, precisely. The Gematria, there are 10? There are 10 different ways of calculating a Gematria, each with its own uniqueness and divine revelation, right, associated with it. Do you do it front to back? Do you do it back to front? Do you do it by skipping it? Do you do it when the hundreds become ones? There are different ways of doing the Gematria.
Wow.
Will it work with other languages? I'm inclined to say no, because we have the 22 letters and the 5 final letters. Those make a big difference. The way that the numbers and the letters sort of coexist, and the way that they both channel separately and together certain divine revelation, I think that it could. I'm not I'm not a linguistic scholar, so I don't know. Maybe because it has to do with numbers, it can be done. Since there's an infinite quality to numbers, even though we cannot enumerate it. There's an infinite sort of quality to it, to the idea of numbers.
Yeah.
And as such, there's a special place, ergo Gematria, and why it's so significant. But I think it will only work with the Hebrew, simply because of the way that, from what I've seen and known, the way that Hebrew is structured and the way that it's approached with connection to the different divine revelations which each letter signifies, right down to the punctuation or the cantorial chant signage. Everything there is very sort of tailored together, woven together with the Hebrew, but I might be wrong.
Yeah. I've seen like there's websites where you can go, they have Gematria calculators, and like there's all these like different ones for English. And I was just like, well, it seems like this mostly originates with Judaism, Kabbalah. So it didn't really make sense that it would really have any meaning in other languages. So
possibly not. Wait, one more point on Gematria.
Yeah.
Our sages say that Gematria, and let's say things like astrology, Hebrew astrology, or other things to do with the change of seasons and omens, these things they say they come after the meal. Meaning Gematria is something where you can start an idea off with Gematria. It's better to finish an idea off with Gematria as a cherry on top. It's not the bulk of the wisdom. They were very adamant about that in the Mishnah, saying that those things are the cherry on the top of wisdom, but not to make the mistake of associating, I think, too much with it. That's the way that I read that Mishnah, and that's the way that I also think about Gematria. Let me put it this way: I've always had this idea of Gematria, and it's validated itself. It's sort of affirmed itself. And I do attribute some, as you saw, significance to Gematria, and it's definitely there, but I don't associate undue significance to it. It's us who speak the language, it's us who write it, it's us who personify it, and who have that idea of numbers, and we're the ones who bring it together. So it's on the individual. I bring it all back to the individual, and not to attribute too much significance to it before it's due.
Okay. Now, there's significance to the alphabet, the aleph bet, and there's significance to the numbers associated with it. And by the way, I should have explained this before for anybody watching. If you're not familiar with what Gematria is, it is basically where you take the alphabet, and then, like, for example, in English, A would have a value of 1, B would have a value of 2. And what he was saying is that there's like different ways, because you could do it forwards and backwards, and then there's other variations as well. What was I just going to say? So numbers and letters, is there any significance in that same context to the sounds of the aleph bet at all?
Yes, definitely. I have no direct experience with this, but there have been sages and righteous folk who have presented different ways of practicing Hebrew meditation, having to do with sounding out the letters, based on primarily books like Sefer Yetzirah, which is attributed to Abraham, but others as well.
Oh, that's attributed to Abraham, the Sefer Yetzirah? Okay.
Sefer Yetzirah miyuchas l'Avraham, yes. That's, he appears there at the end, at the final Mishnah, where it's said that when Abraham, our father, looked and he understood all this being the book, and he discovered, well, let's say there was a revelation that came down, kissed him on his head, and gave him that covenant of Abraham. So
Wow.
Sefer Yetzirah is the great magnum opus of the Aleph Bet. And there's also a Sefer Aleph Bet of Rabbi Akiva, much later, Second Temple era. Okay. Maybe a different kind of kabbalah, maybe not. I don't know. Scholars are debating on where all these books originated and when. But as like a lore, I would say that those two. So Sefer Yetzirah the Hebrew letters, the sounds, yes, there are 5 different ways to make the sounds. Let's say there's the, I mean, I won't, let's put it this way. The teeth, the tongue, the throat, the lips, and what's the, and the, oh, what would it be? What would it be? Next to the throat. I mean, it's a distinction in Hebrew, but I won't try and translate now. I'm after work. My mind is, so let's see. making the sounds out. I mentioned different meditations, and so they would turn in certain ways and breathe in certain ways and get into certain positions while uttering certain sounds corresponding with certain letters, with the a, I, e, u, etc. And it would be with the breath in and out and channeling different revelations into the world through that action. So there's great significance to it. I don't know too much of it, but yeah, the sounds and where they come from also, each one of those is a specific, like, unique revelation or a place of divine influence. And to know how to put them together in harmony and channel something that's greater than the sum of its parts, that's what Kabbalists do when that's what I, when they go through those.
Yeah, that's really amazing. You mentioned it's really amazing. You mentioned Hebrew astronomy, or did you say astronomy?
Astrology.
Astrology. When I was talking to the rabbi, we were talking about the 12 tribes of Israel in 12 months of the year, and how essentially he was saying that you take the sacred name of God, and I prefer not to ever say it. I think a lot of LDS feel the same way. But if you know it, you know it. If you don't, you don't. And it's 4 letters. 2 of the letters are the same. And so when you take the different combinations, like if you were to take the letters, you have all the different combinations, you come up with 12. And so he was associating that number 12 with the tribes of Israel, because we were talking about how I've always felt that it's not just an arbitrary number. There seems to be some kind of connection between that and the months of the year. And then also, there's the 12 signs, or rather, constellations of the zodiac. And so when it comes to Hebrew astrology, is it connected with that, or can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
It's connected to it very much. The number 12, let's see, I don't want to get to the number 12 represents a duality of the Most High, of male and female.
Mm-hmm.
Each one represented as 6 for different reasons, but the 12 tribes, the 12 months, the 12 stones on the breastplate of the high priest, the 12 simple letters of Hebrew letters. Speaking of Sefer Yetzirah, there are 3, let's say, mother letters, 7 double letters, and 12 simple letters, meaning without a hard or a soft, but simply as is. The 12 of those, the 12 ways of having the Yod Hey Vav Hey, right? As your friend mentioned, it all comes together, and the fact that it's the name Yod Hey Vav Hey specifically, those all correspond together to they're different revelations of what's called the middle pillar, or the lower form of the middle pillar, speaking kabbalistically with the 10 sephiroth, the tree of life as it's known. They all correspond to the sephirah called tiferet, which is in the human body, the torso, the center, down, right, in the middle. The significance is basically that. Those are all different ways of embodying, in the case of the tribes, of symbolizing in the other cases, that divine revelation called tiferet. Tiferet means, let's say, for the sake of right here, beauty and harmony in this world.
Now, everybody, just really quick, the reason why I'm really interested in asking Yonatan about Kabbalah and about these different things is because when we think about our own temple, and I don't know, Yonatan, how much you know about us. Sometimes we're called Mormons, but it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Latter-day Saints. Mm-hmm.
And one thing that really sets us apart is that we believe that the ancient temples have been brought back, although they've been repurposed in a sense, but they still have a lot of the same qualities. So we have temples. You can only go in there if you're a member of the church. And so everybody, you know that if you've been through the temple, there's sacred things that we do in there. And it has to do with words, names, things like that. There's a lot of spoken things. And so I wouldn't be surprised if through the ongoing restoration, if maybe aspects of Kabbalah come back. I don't know if it would happen during the millennium or whatever, but I think that there's something there. Are we called to practice?
What do you mean by, if I may ask, what
yeah.
do you mean by aspects of Kabbalah?
I don't just the knowledge of Kabbalah. I
the knowledge, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's that's what I mean. I don't know if like the whole thing or any part of that would be restored to the modern day church, like in our theology. But I think that there's something there. I believe that the Jewish people have very, very deep knowledge of things, in that what they believe is what they say it is. So if we're talking about the sephiroth that comes from Abraham, I don't necessarily doubt them at all. Now, we're not doing it now, but we may do it in the future. So for anyone watching, that's why I'm so interested in it. And obviously, astrology is a big part of our religion as well, and it would be based on the Jewish view of things. In again, just because I know what it is, so I didn't have to ask. But if you guys don't know what the tree of life is, just do an internet search and it'll come up, and you'll have to probably do some of your own study to really get there. But it has to do, like he was saying, with these two different aspects of God, a male and a feminine. And anyway, so I'll leave it there. Now, okay, so I missed one part though, when you were talking about 12 and the human body and the sephiroth. Like how did it, because I know that there's 10 sephiroth, right? So it's not 12, but it's still associated together?
Yes. There's a rule, which is 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. It's always 10.
Yeah.
The idea is that each 10 sephiroth contain within them 10 sephiroth, and so on and so forth. There's there's the male and there's the masculine and feminine aspect, and they themselves sometimes separate, sometimes come together. So there is this duality, as I said, to tiferet, to that middle point, because it comes basically from the merging of men, of the female and the feminine and masculine energies above it, known as the right hand and the left hand. They come together there. So it has a duality baked right into it. Tiferet is represented by the number 6 because of the 6 points at which it touches, and that's the 6 of the Star of David, as it's known, of the Magen David, with the 7th point being invisible in the middle. So it's known as a 6-pointed star, but there's also a 7th hidden element to it. That's why there's a duality there, meaning 6 and 6, together 12, corresponding with the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 tribes, the 12 simple letters, and also the 12 angles of what would it be? No, let's leave it at that.
Okay. It's all amazing. It's beautiful. You can see the order of God in these things. Because like I was saying before, when I was saying before, the Lord doesn't do anything arbitrarily. And so it's all very significant. Even like when you think about things like the significance of 7 and how we have the world has 7 continents. And I don't think that is by mistake. So it just goes on and on and on. Now, when it comes to the astrology, so the astrology is all of it found within Kabbalah, or does it go beyond it? Is it's the constellations, or is there more to that, to astrology?
Well, first, wait, I had something on my mind that was about that. Skipped my mind just now. It'll come to me. Regarding the astrology, the idea of the different signs and how they might affect an individual, it's something that is not deterministic and absolute. The idea of free will reigns over everything, is superordinate to all of that. Meaning, even if there are certain influences, you were born under this star or that star, you're studying Hebrew, you know, it's somebody gets married, what do you say? What's the classic Hebrew blessing?
Is it when they're married? Is it mazel tov?
Mazel tov. Mazel tov means good sign. May it be under a good sign. So there's, I don't know. I mean, usually people would have to think about it a bit. Maybe yeah, but that's literally what it means. Mazal tov means a good sign, and that's something that's completely mazel tov. Mazel tov. It means good sign. The idea of being under a good sign is very significant, but it can act as a guide, as an influence. It doesn't act in your stead. It's not deterministic. It has no agency over you, but you can look at the night sky. You could try to see the order. Because if, and this is what I wanted to say before that skipped my mind, if you're looking hard enough, you'll find anything you want. You'll make those connections because you're trying to look for it. Now, I am biased. Grew up religious, and I've been studying, you know, I've been immersed, well, sometimes more immersed, sometimes less, in these teachings for years, thank God. And I see the order and the chaos, again, that duality in Tiferet. But I know that it's contained under a higher order.
Yeah.
That's represented in Keter, the higher Sphira. Before it splits off into left and right, it starts with one root called the crown.
Yeah, that's the very top one. Again, if you don't know what we're talking about, just look up a picture of the tree of life. At the very top, there's one that's in the middle, not to either side.
Right, and the Nazarite vow corresponds with that. That's why it's called a nezer. Nezer means crown. And so the Nazarite man or woman who take this vow, that's where we seek to, let's say, draw from and act in accordance with, down that middle pillar, from start to finish. There's, well, that's, I mean, speaking of astrology and male and female, the duality, the heavens and the earth, the Nazarite vow cuts, let's say, across it, not a shortcut, mind you, from the topmost point to the lowest, which, much like the hair, right, it's represented there, that grows from the topmost point all the way down, you know, as low as God can grow it.
When it comes to the male-female duality and how we live our lives, it is the idea that you want to kind of like avoid extremes and be more in the middle, or is
it depends on your temperament, and it depends on where you stand, let's say halachically, or you know, or not. But very, very simply, it means you have that masculine and feminine inside of you. Cultivate both and try to find a balance.
Yeah.
That balance, that middle pillar, is going to then be the source of new revelation that could not have been if you had been at this extreme or that extreme. It's that merging of the two essences of the divine revelation, the coming together of the masculine and feminine. That's redemption, whether on a lower scale or a larger scale. That's what that is. That's how it's personified and embodied in the sephiroth, right? That's how it's always symbolized, as that union.
Yeah.
Or a lack thereof.
It's beautiful and it's incredible, and I think it's worth study. If we're for Latter-day Saints, of course, we've been advised, you know, we have to stick to the gospel, but it's good, I think, to at least study and have a knowledge of these things, especially with Judaism. You know, you have other mystic or occult, which means it simply means hidden things within other, you know, religions and religious systems, but I think that we should take special note of Judaism. And again, I'm not saying to necessarily practice it or whatever, but I just wouldn't be surprised if these things are restored as time goes on or become more part of our religion. I don't know though. I don't know. Now,
I was about to ask, as
yeah.
far as you're concerned, what would be the means, well, not the means, what would be the end, let's say, if you call it that, of a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints who would be studying these teachings? I'm wondering how
To become more like,
how you feel it would benefit, if that.
yeah, to become more like God, because if those things are indeed divine, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are, you're learning more about God and how he works. And that's one of the main goals for us in our church is we have a unique view. It's different from Judaism and pretty much any other faith, but um, instead of having the view that we are creatures of God, we believe that we are essentially the same species as God, and therefore you can become like him after this life. And it's through keeping commandments, performing mitzvot, learning, and be like changing yourself to be as he is. And of course, we learn a lot about that through keeping commandments. And so,
Yes.
if Kabbalah and those things are divine, from my point of view, like theologically, then that would obviously be necessary at some point. It may not be relevant to us now at this stage of the church, but maybe later on, once we're more prepared or ready to receive it, then maybe we will. So that's our view.
There's one, let's say, caveat that I would put on my view of it, which is that you said to know God and be like him, that there's a great, let's put it this way. I say that I don't know God at all. All I know is how God reveals himself through me, to me, mostly to me. There is this great idea of the creator and creation with a great divide between them. There are channels that can open up, but if it can be perceived, then it is not God. That's how I put it. So there's this question of, in the Torah, it says that we need to cling to God. And that goes back to Genesis, right? That a man shall cling to his woman and they will become one flesh. The idea of clinging to God, the idea of clinging to a woman, of birthing something new together, I understand what you mean when you say that we're the same species in that way. The Kabbalah, at least the Kabbalah of the Ramak, which I've been studying for the past 7-8 years, is different from other types of Kabbalah in the sense of he's very, 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 Rabbi Moshe Cordovero is very, very adamant about that great divide that can never be crossed between creator and creation. Meaning, and this our sages say in the Talmud, what do you mean cling to him? It says in the Torah to cling to him, to love him. What do you mean? It says also that he is burning fire, all-consuming fire. How can you cling to all-consuming fire? It says, no, don't cling to him, cling to his attributes.
Yeah.
Again, the 10 sephiroth, each is its own divine attribute, revelation. So to cling to God, in my view, is to cling to the way that the 10 sephiroth reveal him, it, her.
Yeah, exactly.
So and that comes right down to Torah and commandments. So the entire idea there is, right, is to perform certain actions, do certain things, behave in certain ways, conduct ourselves in a way which will be able to bring that union. Larger and larger it will grow. So I understand what you mean, but still there's that divide there, because we can't know God in that sense, but we can learn how God works in the world and how he is revealed to us, and understand through that what is our place within this.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Without great divide, that is one part where we'd have to depart, just because like our view of Israel, Israel in my religion is very extremely important.
The land, the state, or the people?
All of it.
All of it.
Maybe to a lesser extent the state, but the Abrahamic covenant descending down to Israel, and the fact that the Lord never forgot his covenant people. And so we believe that the Jews are still a covenant people. We've accepted Christ, but we still believe that Jews are the covenant people, as well as those that have been scattered throughout the world, both among the Jews and also, the previous northern kingdom and those
Israel.
tribes.
Mhm.
And so even though that previous kingdom essentially got lost to time, it became so mixed in among the Gentile nations, we
Yeah.
still think that God still knows who they are by whatever criteria that is that he uses, that he's gathering them in as well as Judah, in that at some point it's going to come together. So like when you join my church, you go to a person in the church that's called a patriarch, and it's a special calling, and they give you a blessing and tell you what tribe you descend through.
Right, you're Ephraim. I heard you speak with Mr. Berkowitz there.
Yes. Of course, according to my point of view in religion. I know that wouldn't be accepted. I wouldn't be able to like make Aliyah to Israel based on that.
Right.
But
Likely.
but that is our view, that they're still there, they're going to be found, and they are being found, and it's going to come together. So that's why we're so interested in Judah.
Same with the Rastas, by the way, who have a sect called 12 Tribes of Israel.
Yeah, so it's probably it's like similar in that way. And who knows, only God himself knows where everybody is, and so forth. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so we believe that Israel, like you can have Gentiles that do come into the church, and we're not going to know either way, because it's like you can't do a test to see if someone is a pure-blooded Gentile.
Okay.
But our prophets have said that basically most people that have joined are literally to some extent or another from Israel, and that there's probably been very few actual full-blooded Gentiles that have joined. So our belief is that Israel is like, the government of God on the earth, that it's their charge to be, I mean, just like, a holy nation, a holy nation of priests, and that after
Kingdom
this
of priests and a holy nation.
yeah, and then after this life that would continue, and it goes on for there. I guess I don't want to get too deep, but it's just amazing. Let me ask just a couple more questions before we wrap this up. Okay, because I wanted to touch a little bit on the Levite aspect too, just a few questions. But one thing that I forgot to ask, and I was thinking about this, as a Nazarite, one of the three things is that you avoid the deceased, the dead. But in that, that also includes animals, right?
No, it does not. That idea of the purity and impurity of death is that it's a human corpse. Okay. Now, that's the first, like a major degree of ritual impurity. There are lesser degrees of ritual impurity, and one of those is touching the carcass of an animal, but it's not the same degree as a human corpse.
Okay.
Now my vow is a Samson vow, and much like Samson was not commanded to abstain from death and defilement of death, I also have the option of attending funerals, being near dead bodies. I sort of had to do it that way, though I try and abstain. I had to do it that way because at the time I was still part of the reserves. I only got out last year, right, the IDF reserves, and I was a field medic. So I knew that there was a chance that I would be faced with this at some point, with a human corpse. I didn't want to do anything that would intentionally break the vow. So the Samson vow is the one that I took on, basically.
If something happens, say that your hair gets cut, or somehow the vow is broken in whatever respect, what happens at that point? Are you able to restore it? Is there something you have to do to return? What happens?
Biblically speaking, in Numbers 6, where the vow includes defilement of death and abstaining from it, then if a Nazarite man or woman were defiled accidentally, then they would have to bring their offerings, wait the 7 days, have the water sprinkled on them on the 3rd and 7th day, and restart the count. If they took it for X amount of time, years, months, then they had to start from 0, from day 1. My vow cannot be broken, A, because it's a Samson vow, and that's for life to begin with. There are 4 different types of Nazarite vows, and the Samson vow is one which is for life from the beginning. And there's no defilement of death, of dead bodies, but it can be broken only through death. If a Nazarite drinks wine or cuts his hair in the presence of witnesses and after being warned, as is halachically the custom, and there was a standing court, a proper Hebrew halachic court or rabbinic court, then they would, what would it be? Anyway, they would flog him. I'm not sure, but the vow would not be broken. The vow can only be broken if part of the vow was do not be defiled by death, and it happens. That's how you break the vow and have to start over. The other 2 facets, if they are broken, do not necessitate starting over.
Okay.
So that's where that stands. But other than Numbers 6, there is the Samson vow, and there are Nazarites for set periods of time where now it's not taken if you do it according to what's halachically passed down through halacha. And I'm not a man of halacha, by the way, but as I said, I still adhere to parts of it. So it would be only breaking it that way. So now you would take it for life without a temple, meaning you would start from 0, but until you bring the sacrifices, the vow keeps going. So it would be for life anyway.
Okay, that makes sense. And then just a little bit about being a Levite. That's also a very special thing. For anyone that's not aware, everyone that's a member of the church should be aware, but within the tribe of Levi, they were given the priesthood, right? And so you have the sons of Aaron, Moses's brother, that are the priests. And in Hebrew, you'd be a Cohen. The plural is Kohanim. So they're the ones that do like the higher duties, I guess, in the temple, basically, the ones performing the sacrifices and so forth. And then you have the Leviim, the rest of the tribe of Levi, and they assist in the temple in its upkeep. They also have special duties, such as, my understanding is, music within the temple and some other things. So few questions. Do you feel a kinship? Maybe this is a dumb question, I don't know, but do you feel a kinship with other Leviim in with the Kohanim at all? Like, not to say that it's like a club, but do you just kind of like, do you notice that when there's like another Leviim when you're in a crowd or a room?
Well, if you're talking about, let's say, the rituals, like the morning prayers, which I don't attend, I have my ongoing dialogue with the Most High. I haven't gone to synagogue in years. It's just I did for many years, several times a day, and then I found my own voice, let's put it that way, for now. Not ruling going back later, but over there are certain rituals where the Leviim and the Kohanim are singled out. At times when it's time for the priestly blessing, or during the ascension to the Torah to read, where the Leviim and the Kohanim are given the first couple of portions. So out and about, you wouldn't be able to recognize Levite or Kohen from anyone else, other than perhaps their last name. So certain last names have certain meanings and are attributed to different tribes.
And Hurwitz is...
Hurwitz, most Hurwitz are Levites, but there are Hurwitzes which are not Levites. Unless you want me to go deeper into Hurwitz and its origin in the old Czech kingdom, that's basically Hurwitz HaLevi are the Leviim, and there are regular Hurwitzes which are not Levi.
Okay.
So as for a kinship, I have a kinship, I'd like to think, with the covenant of Levi. Not necessarily with people who are of this tribe or that. You know, a Hebrew person is a Hebrew person. There's a kinship there that transcends the tribes. And so no, but there's definitely a kinship with what the Leviim and Kohanim represent. And speaking of the 12, right, and the 12 tribes and the 12 months and the 12 Hebrew ways to write Yod He Vav He there, there's a 13th month. You may be aware, you may not. The month of Adar.
Yeah.
Right. So during the 12 months of the year, if it's a regular year, It's all the different tribes corresponding with the different months, corresponding with the different signs, corresponding with the different names of Yod Hei Vav Hei, the different ways to write it. And then there's the 13th month, Adar Bet, which is represented by Levi. And all the other ones, Levi is not incorporated into it. It's Menashe and Ephraim who are split from Joseph. So Menashe and Ephraim, one of them takes the place of Levi, and the tribe of Levi, part of its significance is that it's the additional month of Adar Bet. Adar represents, right? It's Pisces, it's the fish, it's the thing which outlasted the flood. It's this great thing that reaches far, 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 into the depths of, creation. Now, that's what it represents. Not all Levites and priests are wonderful people. Not all people are wonderful people.
Right.
But the covenant of Levi is what that represents. Now, it's a covenant which was passed down through birth. So it means less to me personally. I would rather an individual, be him or her from whatever tribe, earn their keep, right, in doing the work and not wearing a crown, be it false or, real, of, oh, I'm this, I'm that. All these names, right, of Israel, of Nazarite, of Levite, of everything associated with it, these are all things that I feel I need to continuously earn and not take lightly.
Yeah.
So I have a great affinity and closeness with the covenant of Levi as it's written in the prophets and as it's carried out in my family specifically is closely related, according to tradition, with Kehat, the family of Levi of Kehat, who were the bearers of the ark. I feel a great kinship to that area of service. And that's what I'm striving to do. It's certainly not where I am. Let's make no mistake about that. But that carrying of the ark, the taking on of the burden of the tribe of Levi, of walking through the desert, with that thing on your, that's what that covenant represents to me. Right? And that's for every individual.
Yeah.
But that's what it says to me. So I have a kinship with that covenant, but not necessarily all people of Levi.
We have a belief that in my theology, we have a belief that there was a life before this life, that God created us as spirits. We learn things and progress to a point where we had to come and have this mortal experience. But in that life, there was an organization of Israel. And we have like no details really of what things were like, but the belief is that when you're born into here, just like anything else, it's not arbitrary, in that it's because you were valiant, you were really good in the life before, and so you qualified or you were part of Israel. And in my theology, I think we'll learn a lot more about that in the future, what things were like, but I think there's a very specific reason, for my opinion, why you are a Levite and why you're born when you were. And I think the implications are pretty deep. Although, like you said, yes, it's important that we all live accordingly, because what good is it if you're not living the best that you can? And I think that in my theology, you can lose it. Technically you would still be Israel, but you can lose that, and Gentiles who want to be adopted into the house of Israel, they can obviously do that and whatever. So I think it's a very special thing from my point of view that you're Levi, and I think everyone does have specialness to them, different responsibilities and things that they do in this life, both individually and at a tribal level. But have you, because there's this one guy that I watch sometimes, his name is Yair Levy, and he gets into music and stuff like that. Do you or do other Levites kind of like have that in the back of your mind about, like, what, I should learn music just in case, like, when the temple comes, like if I ever serve, because is there a chance that you would ever serve in the temple, and is music part of your life in regards to being a Levite?
In regards to being a Levite, only that I learned guitar, to play guitar. All of my family plays guitar. One of them professionally. It's what he does for a living. The rest of us play, chords and nothing more really. But we all play. Like technically, not very well, perhaps all of us, but yeah, we all play and we all are interested in music. I think music is a part of all of our, my immediate family's life to one degree or another. Music is, a human experience. But as for that, I would be honored to serve with my brothers and sisters at the temple. It would be a great honor for me to do that. And there's Shmuel Yosef Agnon, the author who won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And he started off his speech, I don't recall when it was, but he starts off his Nobel acceptance speech by saying that out of the catastrophe that Rome destroyed Israel, I was born in the diaspora. But in my mind's eye, I always saw myself with my Levite brothers playing at the temple. That's how he starts off his speech. The idea, when I was 18 and started getting into higher studies before military service, I went for about 3 years of yeshiva, right, of higher religious studies, as it were. And when I was 18, the posters I had in my room changed to posters that I went into the old city of Jerusalem, to the Temple Institute, a wonderful exhibition. And
Yeah,
I bought posters. You could buy it online. I bought posters. One of those posters that I put up on my wall is of the Levitical choir, as it was when it was singing, right? An artist's conception, and a few others. That idea of singing and music and what it represents is very, very close and near and dear to my heart. It's said that the spiritual hall of music is adjacent to the hall of tshuva, of returning, of repentance. There is something about a melody that can stir your heart, even without words. A melody. That's what's that's what's called a nigun, a melody, a chanting in the Hasidic world. And before that, there's a reason why prophets would use music. There's a reason why Saul, when he wanted to have a reprieve from the evil spirit that was on him, that he wanted somebody who would play, right? Or somebody suggested it to him.
Yeah.
To have somebody who will play. Music can induce newer and different forms of consciousness. And it can really seep through. We sort of harmonize with it, we dance with it, and that's like an ancient human practice. So there's great significance to music. There's great significance to that to that idea, the fact that it's seven, right? The seven notes, and it's said that there will be a new song in the prophets. And that day there will be a new song. There's a lot there. So I feel great connection to music, whether or not as a Levite, I couldn't say, but I've certainly have pondered and have thought of if and when I will merit, right, to be able to play at the temple with my brothers and sisters. That would be very cool.
Well, I really hope so. I wouldn't be surprised if you do. Again, I don't think it's just wishful thinking. I really do think that the temple will be rebuilt within our lifetimes. I think a lot of people think that, and I really hope that you get that opportunity. I'll be praying for you so that you can. But okay, so we should probably wrap it up here. Again, Yonatan, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jared. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for talking to us. We have a fascination about these things, and it's so good to actually talk to somebody rather than just like studying it from, a website or whatever. It's good to actually talk to somebody.
Well, I'm not a rabbi or a scholar or anybody who you should follow. But I'm just a Hebrew man, doing my thing.
We can still learn a lot from you, and I think that we have today. Everybody watching, I'm going to put his channel in the description below, so I would encourage you to do that because he talks a lot of like religious things. You can learn a lot from him about Judaism and just his unique perspective spiritually. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. And then if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to this channel if you're new. Like the video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.